Hey guys, and welcome to another video on the channel. If you enjoy this video, please leave a thumbs up below and subscribe to the channel. So today I'm bringing you a short game, a miniature game from the Tata Steel Challengers group in Vaikanze, which finished very recently. All of you recall the Pragnananda Gukesh win in the last round, that fantastic and exciting tiebreak. But this is a game from the Challengers. So the Challengers is the B group, and it's also very, very strong and mixes some seasoned grandmasters, young grandmasters, with some IMs, up and coming young players. So it's a very exciting group, and the winner goes on to play the main group next year. So the game we're looking at today features Li Maioyi from China. She's a 14-year-old international master, already rated 24-29. A lot of people talk about Faustino Oro and the other young masters, but this girl is very, very strong, as we'll see in the game, and I think she has a wonderful, fantastic future in front of her, especially bearing in mind that China has a lot of very strong, top-rated women players. The current world champion is Chinese, Zhu Jun, and also the challenger is Li Maioyi is also Chinese. So I mean, they're dominating women's chess in the last few years. With the black pieces, Frederick Svane from Germany, 2664, a very strong player. Svane is outrating Li Maioyi by more than 200 and nearly 250 points. But of course, anything can happen in a high-level game. But I did think this was an interesting one to bring to you. First of all, because we're going to learn to play a bit more of the French defense, which I know a lot of you play. And secondly, there's some nice tactics in the game. And third, we get a chance to see some of these top players. And if you don't know them, now you get to see their faces, learn their names, and get to know a bit more about them, which is one of the main objectives of the channel. So let's get into the game. Although I'm sporting my Chessable chess.com shirt, this video is not sponsored by them. I have many shirts. I like to use the red one, which is my Spanish Chess Federation t-shirt. But today I'm with my Chessable shirt, and although I'm not sponsored with them, I do work with Chessable with my opening courses. If you want to check out my white repertoire, the link is underneath in the description and also in the information of the channel. Check it out, you might enjoy it. Okay, so e4, e6, d4, d5, and Li Maioyi goes for the exchange variation. Now, we've always thought the exchange variation is a sort of drawish line, yeah? But it has a bit more venom than it looks like, and especially with this knight f3 move order, which is interesting because without going into too much detail, against bishop to d3, which was the normal move, white has to face knight c6, hitting the d pawn. And whereas with knight f3, knight to c6 can be faced by bishop to b5, or even sometimes c4. And the other interesting move for black is bishop to d6, but then c4 is even better, because to play against the isolated pawn on d4, the bishop is not totally well placed on d6. It's definitely better on e7, for example. This is a bit theoretical, but it just gives you an idea that knight f3 is not just a developing move. There's some other ideas behind it. So when I'm faced against knight f3, I like to go for c5 and just play a isolated queen's pawn, but many players don't like to go for the isolated queen pawn, and I suspect that Svane that's not one of his favorite setups. So he plays knight to f6, bishop d3, bishop d6, castle, castle, bishop g5, bishop g4. This is totally symmetrical, and if white doesn't do anything aggressive, this game will end in a draw, which in a closed tournament is okay for the higher rated player because he doesn't mind losing a couple of rating points drawing with black, as long as he gets an easy game and then can play for advantage with white on the next day. So for example here, He could just play knight to bd7 and something like c3, c6, bishop t2, bishop b7, rook e1, rook e8. This would easily end in a draw after some exchanges. Okay, here we have to be a bit careful because we're dropping the h2 pawn, but you get the idea. We can play h3 first and then swap rooks, and this is just an equal position and we'll go for a draw. So Svane plays h6 first, which is okay. I personally don't like playing h6 because now I don't have the maneuver bishop h5, g6 so easily available. So there is some risks in playing h6. It does mean that you can get in g5 if need be. But as g5 is not a especially strong move, I'm not sure that h6 is the best move here. In any case, it's not a bad move. Knight d7. And now instead of going c3, which would be solid, Li Maioyi goes for c4, which I'm not sure she would have done if black hadn't weakened slightly his kingside with h6. Of course, the idea is to play with an isolated d-pawn, but hopefully we're going to get the bishop pair in exchange or some sort of initiative. Knight to b6 is okay. And I actually like Li Maioyi's move here. She doesn't exchange off the bishop, which would be slightly better for white for the bishop pair, but black does get a very strong hold on d5, and I think black is doing quite well here actually. She plays knight to e3, hitting the bishop on g4 and keeping a couple of pieces on the board. A bishop to e6, bishop c2, threatening queen to d3 with some ideas of attack. Rook g8, queen d3. And this is quite an interesting moment. Black plays c6 just to control the d5 square, maybe to play queen to c7. And of course, you might be wondering what happens if black is captured on f6 and queen to h7. Well, the funny thing is, if you have the escape route via e7 available, sometimes this queen entrance on h7 can backfire. For example, here, if we go check and then we try to escape again, the white queen will be trapped in the corner. So, when you're preparing to go into these squares with the queen, just make sure that the escape route is either controlled by you and therefore there's no escape, which means it's mate, or if you can't escape, make sure your queen doesn't get trapped here. Just don't go for this other check. Keep the queen on h7 and maybe try to somehow make some control of the escape square. Something to remember when you're playing for the attack. And this is quite typical, so it's good to know. So Li Maioyi obviously knows this, and she plays rook fe1, maybe trying to get this in somehow. Knight bd7, that's a good move. The knight can drop back to f8 to protect, or against the exchange, Frederick will now capture with the knight and control h7. So Lu plays knight to f5, hitting the bishop. Maybe bishop takes was okay, queen takes. But here I do think that the two bishops, especially the light square bishop, there's not so much control on d5. I think white is doing well here. White can fight for the advantage. And notice that rook takes rook doesn't work because we can't bring the other rook here because of the tactic on f7, because of the bishop. So this would be working very well for white. Svane, who by the way up to the moment has played very well, drops back to f8 with the bishop, which is perfectly okay. And Li Maioyi increments the pressure with knight to e5. Now, here Svane makes a mistake, but I have to say it's quite a natural mistake. Svane tries to reduce the pressure by exchanging pieces. And this is a mistake, as we will see in the game. The correct move, but a very difficult move to do, is g6. And I wanted to show you this because this is a very important concept in chess, which is learn to defend worse positions and using certain techniques to get out of worse positions. And I'm going to show you one of the techniques that strong grandmasters use when they face a worse position. In fact, what I'm going to do is show you how the game finished, and then we'll come back here and learn something together. So Svane, under pressure, clearly under pressure, exchanges the knights, which is not correct, with the idea that if white captured with the pawn, then he gets to exchange queens first, and then he can move his knight out of the way, and things are more or less okay for him. However, Li Maioyi captured with the rook, and now there are some threats, such as rook e1, maybe knight takes h6 will be a threat at some point, followed by bishop takes knight, and then we have this mate. So Svane had already calculated knight takes knight, rook takes knight, and now g6. But now Li Maioyi just drops back the knight, and there are a lot of threats in the position. This is a very, very dangerous position. Look, the rooks are coming to the attack. The bishop is pinning the knight. The queen and the bishop are hitting on the battery. If g5 now, trying to trap the bishop, Li Maioyi had calculated knight h5, and we can't capture the knight because of the mate, and this is a losing position. So Svane played bishop to g7, and now Lu piles up the pressure now on f6. Now again, g5 is possible, but then we sacrifice on g5, and all of white's pieces are crushing. Now the threat is to go with this combination in some order, and there's no way of defending against all of the attack. Svane, under clear and heavy pressure, makes a mistake. He plays bishop to f5, and this one drops a piece. Take on f6, the precise move order, and now if she takes back, exchange the rooks, and we win the queen with knight takes f6. And the other variation which happened in the game was bishop takes e4, intermediate move, but then we take the queen, and if she takes back the queen, she drops off the rook. Svane had calculated rook takes e5 first, thinking that maybe after pawn takes rook, there might be time to still stay in the game. But Li Maioyi had already calculated queen to c3, and now the rook is attacked and the bishop is attacked, and we have the extra queen, which means we are going to win a lot of material. And Svane resigned. So as we see, that pin on f6 was decisive for the win of material, with the amount of pressure that white was putting on the pin and on black's castle king. Let's go back to the position I was mentioning before, here. Now, it's clear that black is under pressure, and eventually he made a mistake that cost him a game and a miniature game. Good players use their calculation and their intuition to understand that their position is already very dangerous. And what they will do is, one technique is to simplify the position, sometimes even losing a pawn, and try to get to an ending which they know has very good drawing chances even though they're a pawn down. And this is very difficult to do, because if you don't see a way that you're going to lose, why would you give up a pawn and go to an ending a pawn down? And that's where the intuition comes into hand, because it's very difficult to calculate these 7 or 8 moves in advance with precision. It's just sort of like you sense that if you keep all these pieces on the board, something bad is going to happen, although you're not able to calculate it. So we're going to change the pieces round, and look what Svane could have done. Of course, I've used the computer to work this out, but a strong grandmaster can also do this on the board. And I actually think that Svane probably tried to do this on the board, but either he thought that the ending was very bad, which as we'll see it's not, or he thought that the ending was holdable, but he didn't see the strength of Li Maioyi's attack by keeping the pieces on the board. A miscalculation. So I think it's one of these two, or both of them. What should he have done? He could have played here. He could have played. Sorry, the position was here, not, it was just before here. Already the exchange of knights is a bad move. What could he have done? He could have played g6 straight away, hitting the knight. And now, knight takes d7 is a forced variation. We have to take with the queen. And now if white captures the knight, black captures the knight on f5, and everything is good. We don't lose anything, we exchange pieces. But of course, white can insert an intermediate move, which is knight takes h check, bishop takes, and bishop takes. But now, although we've lost the pawn, we continue simplifying the position. Bishop to f5. We exchange off a rook. We exchange off a bishop. And we exchange off the second rook. And although white does have an extra pawn, the extra pawn, number one, is a isolated pawn on d4. And number two, 3 pawns against 2 on the king side is mostly a draw in nearly all endings. Rook endings, minor piece endings, queen endings. So, as long as black is able to exchange the pawns on the queen side, and there is an isolated pawn here, this should be a draw. Black will play queen to e6, keep his position more or less active, and just wait and hold. I checked this with the computer, and the computer is giving 0.15, 0.20, which is basically equality. So, what I'm trying to show you with this idea is that if you're in a position where you're being attacked hard, but you have a chance to give a pawn and swap a few pieces and end up in some endings where you can hold the position even though you're pawn down because there is no clear passed pawn or there is no clear way to win, this is probably a better idea than continuing the game with all the pieces on the board and facing a hard attack by your opponent. So this is a technique matter. Maybe it's a bit advanced, but I'm sure and I hope that some of you out there grasp this idea and keep it in your repertoire. And if you're teachers or coaches, this is something that you have to teach your children and your students, because defending well is a major part of being a top player. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this game. I really like this game. It's one of the best ones I saw at the Tata Steel Challenges, and we get to know Li Maioyi, which we'll definitely hear more about her in the future. And of course, Svane is an excellent player. He just had a bad day in the office. So if you enjoyed, please leave a comment below. Tell me your favorite opening, and I'll do my best to find miniature games of your opening. Just leave a comment below. Thumbs up for everyone, and we'll see you in the next video. And of course, please just try to keep improving and enjoy the game and have fun.